Good evening, everyone. I am Anna Marie Tapia, together with Mr. Aldous Topic, and we are assigned to report tonight for the chapter 14. Chapter 14, which is the strategic evaluation and control. This is the chapter outline. First is the introduction, then the process of strategic control, then the reluctance to use strategic control, then its environmental factors, and then the information and implementing. And last is the successful maintenance of strategic control. And its objectives first is we'll be able to understand the concept of strategic control and its process. Then to understand why some managers are reluctant to use strategic control and know the kinds of information necessary and understand how to implement strategic control. Once the strategy is formulated and implemented, there is no guarantee that the strategy is implemented as it is designed and the strategy generates the result as aimed at. Therefore, the strategist has to evaluate the strategy and its program to assess whether the implementation of the strategy is as per the strategic plan. Further, a number of deviations, either in the external environment or in the organizational environment, may take place. These deviations may necessitate a change in strategy. These changes also require a strategic evaluation and control. Definition of control. Control consists of making something happen the way it was planned to happen. According to Henry Fayol, control consists in verifying whether everything occurs in conformity with the plan adopted and the instruction issued and principles established. Its objective is to point out weaknesses and errors in order to rectify them and prevent recurrence. It operates on everything, things, people, and actions. We have three procedures to control function. First is measuring actual performance, then comparing actual performance to standards, then taking corrective action to ensure that planned events actually occur. So this is the model of the control process and its function. Uh, Controlling begins, which is the work continues, measure of performance and new work situation begins. Under for work continues is the no corrective action necessary, and for the measure of performance it is compare measurement to standards, and then for the new work situation begins it is take corrective action, change plan, organization, and influencing methods which result to performance equivalent to standards and performance significantly different from standards. Next is we have three types of control. First is the preliminary control, then the concurrent control, and feedback control. Under the first control is human, material, capital, and financial resources acquired and combined in organization. And for the concurrent control, it is within which planned activity occurs, and for the feedback control, it is leading to result achieves. Purposes of strategic control. The basic purpose of strategic control is to help top management to achieve strategic goals as planned. To be specific, the purposes of strategic control are to answer the questions such as: are our internal strengths and weaknesses still holding good? Or are opportunities still opportunities? And are threats still existing or there are new threats? And are the decisions being made consistent with policy? Are goals and targets being met? Then, should we proceed with plans as we have formulated? Then, lastly, is are the organizational vision, mission, and objectives appropriate to changing environmental factors? Next is the process of strategic control. The strategic control process consists of 6 steps. Top management initially must decide what elements of the environment and the organization need to be monitored, evaluated, and controlled. The 3 key areas to be monitored and controlled are: first is the macro environment, the industry environment, and the internal operations. These are the differences between strategic control and the budgetary control. The strategic control, the time period is lengthy, ranging from a few years to over 10 years. And for the budgetary, the time period is usually 1 year or less. And then for the measurements of the strategic are quantitative and qualitative, but for the measurement, for the budgetary, it's only quantitative. And for the concentration, for strategic, it is internal and external, but for the budgetary, it is internal only. And for the corrective action is ongoing for strategic, but for the budgetary, corrective action only be taken after budget period has collapsed. And for the next table, it is the differences between strategic control and the operational control. Under the attribute, we have basic question. Number 2, aim. 3, main concern. And next, focus. Then the time horizon. Number 6 is exercise of control. And lastly is the main techniques. For the basic question, the strategic control is, are we moving in the right direction? And for the operational, how are we performing? And then for the aim, proactive, continuous questioning of the basic direction of strategy. And for the operation, allocation and use of organizational resources. And for the main concern, steering the organization future direction, but for the operation, action control. And for the focus, it is external environment, and for the operational control, it is internal organization. And for the time horizon, for the strategic, it is long term, and for the operational, it is short term only. And for the exercise of control, it is exclusively by top management, maybe through lower level support. And for the operational control, it is mainly by executive or middle level management on the direction of the top management budgets, schedules, and MBO. And lastly, for the main techniques, environmental scanning, information gathering, questioning, and review. Next is the key areas to be monitored. As stated earlier, one of the key areas to be monitored is the macro environment of the company. This area should be focused first. Normally, individual companies cannot influence the environment significantly, but the external environmental forces must be continuously monitored as the changes in the environment influence the strategic implementation process of the company. As discussed in the earlier chapters, continuous strategic fit between the company and its external environment is necessary. Therefore, strategic control is essential. Strategic monitoring and control includes modifying any one or more of the areas like company's mission, objectives, goals, strategy formulation, and strategy implementation. The modification depends upon the nature and degree of changes and shifts in the environment. So as you can see here in the table, we have the 6 steps for strategic control process. Next is the step 2, which is establishing standards. Evaluating an organizational performance is normally based on certain standards. These standards may be the previous year's achievements or the competitors' records or the fresh standards established by the management. Qualitative judgment like the qualitative features of the product or service in the last year may be used. Quantitative measures like return or investment, return on sales may also be used for judging the performance. The standards may include first, quality of the product services, then the quantity of the products to be produced, then the quality of the management. Next is the innovativeness or the creativity, then the long-term investment value. Next is volume of sales or the market shares. Then the financial soundness in terms of return on investment, return on equity capital, or the market price of the share or earnings per share. Lastly is the community and environmental responsibility in terms of amount spent on community development, variety of facilities provided to the community, program undertaken for the environmental protection, and the ecological balance. And for the strategic evaluation and control, first is the soundness of human resource management in terms of number of employees' grievances, employee satisfaction rate, and employee turnover rate, and industrial relation situation. Next is the ability to attract, develop, and retain competent and skilled people. Then, use of company assets. Next, production targets, rate of capacity utilization, design of new products, new uses of existing product, rate of customer complaints about the product quality, and suitability of the ingredients. Lastly is the standards relating the organizational variables include freedom and autonomy, level of control, responsibility, formal organization, and degree of formally and informal organization. Step 3. Measuring performance. The strategist has to measure the performance of various areas of the organization before taking an action. Strategic audits measurements methods are useful to measure the organizational performance. Strategic audit is an execution and evaluation of organization operation affected by the strategy implementation. It is very comprehensive, emphasizing all the facets of the strategic management process. It may also be narrowly focused, emphasizing only on a single part of the process, such as environmental process. Strategic audit also may be quite formal, adhering to organizational rules and procedures. So, in the table, how to conduct a strategic audit. So, it is conducted in 3 phases. First is diagnosis to identify how, where, and in what priority in-depth analysis need to be made. Then, focus analysis and generation and testing of recommendation. Then, objectivity and the ability to ask critical, proving questions are key requirements for conducting a strategic audit. For the phase 1 Diagnosis. Number one is review key documents such as first is the strategic plan, then the business or the operational plans, then organizational arrangement and the major policies government matters such as resource allocation and performance measurement. So those four documents must be reviewed. So that's for under the phase 1 diagnosis. And for number 2, review financial, market, and operational performance against benchmark and industry norms to identify key variances and emerging trends. Number 3, gain an understand of principal rules, responsibilities, and reporting relationship. Then, we must also understand the decision-making process and major decision made. We must also understand the resources, including physical facilities, capital, management, and the technology. Then, interrelationships between functional staff member and the business or operating units. Number 4 is identify strategic implications of strategy for organization structure, behavior patterns, systems, and processes. Define interrelationship and linkage to strategy. And for number 5, determine internal and external perspectives. Then, lastly, for number 6, identify aspects of the strategy that are working well. Formulate hypotheses regarding problems and opportunities for improvement based on the findings above. Define how and in what order to pursue each. Then for the phase 2, focus analysis. Under of this phase 2, first is the test the hypothesis concerning problems and opportunities for improvement through analysis of the specific issues, and identify interrelationship and dependencies among components of the strategic system. And for the number 2, formulate conclusion as to weaknesses in strategy formulation, implementation, deficiencies, or the interaction between the two. Lastly, for the phase 3 it is which is the recommendations. Develop alternative solution to problems and ways of capitalizing on opportunities. Test these alternatives in light of the resource requirements, risk, rewards, priorities, and other applicable measures. Then develop specific recommendations to produce an integrated, measurable, and time-based action plan to improve strategic results. For the strategic audit measurement methods, generally accepted methods may be used to measure organizational performance. We have two methods here. First is the qualitative methods and then the quantitative methods. For the qualitative organizational measurements, it is form of the non-numerical data that are subjectively summarized. These measurements are organized and provided to the strategist for decision-making and strategic control action. Critical questions are designed to reflect important facets of the organizational operation. So, how to evaluate corporate strategy mentioned in several important questions to measure organizational performance qualitatively. These questions include first, it is organizational strategy internally consistent. Internally consistency is concerned to the cumulative impact of various strategies on the organization. Are strategic conflicting with each other? Strategy should also be judged by their relationship with other organizational initiatives. Next question. Is the organization strategy consistent with its environment? Normally, organizational strategies are formulated based on the industry environment and general environment. Similarly, the strategies are modified based on the environmental changes. The strategist should see whether the strategies are consistent with the present and future environmental factors. Number three question. Is organizational strategy appropriate given organizational resources? Strategy implementation invariable requires the allocation of sufficient resources. Is the time horizon of the strategy appropriate? Organizational strategies are formulated to achieve specific goals within a time framework. It should require whether the time framework under the existing circumstances is realistic and acceptable. Qualitative measurement methods are efficient are useful, but applying them relies mostly on human judgment. Conclusion based on the such method should be drawn carefully due to the subjectivity of the judgment. For the quantitative organizational measurements, it is under organizational measurement of the performance of strategy implementation is taking place in the form of numerical data. The numerical data can be summarized and organized to draw conclusions and to recommend strategic action. Quantitative measurements can be used to evaluate number of units produced per time period, cost of production, and cost of marketing. Then, productivity and the production efficiency levels, and profit growth, net earning per share, dividend rate, return on equity, market price of the share, then the cost of production and for the cost of marketing. Organization designed and use their own methods to evaluate the performance quantitatively. The common use methods includes the return on investment. Return on investment is widely used as a measure of organizational performance. So the management calculates the return on investment for consecutive years or consecutive quarters and compares the values of over the period to measure the performance. The ROI is a measure of the organizational performance. It has its advantages and limitations. So the ROI has advantages and its limitation. The first one for the advantages is it is a single comprehensive figure influenced by everything that happens in a firm. 2. It is measure how well the division manager uses the asset of the company to generate profits. It is also a good way to check on the accuracy of capital investment proposals. Number 3 is it is a common denominator that can be compared among many entities. And it provides an incentive to use existing assets efficiently. Lastly, for the advantages is it provides an incentives to acquire new assets only when doing so would increase the firm's return. And for its limitation, ROI is very sensitive to depreciation policy. Variances in depreciation write-offs between divisions affect their ROI performance. Accelerated depreciation techniques reduce ROI. Conflicting with capital budgeting discounted cash flow analysis. And for the number 2, it is sensitive to book value. Older plants with more fully depreciated assets have relatively lower investment basis than newer plants, increasing ROI. Note also that inflation can skew asset values at ROI. Managers might be tempted to hold down asset investment or dispose of assets in order to increase ROI performance. In the number three, in many firms that use ROI, one division sales to another. So transfer pricing affects the measure. Expenses incurred affect profit. Since in theory, the transfer price should be based on the total impact on firm profit. Some investment center excuse me, managers are bound to suffer. Equitable transfer prices are difficult to determine. Next is, if one division operates in favorable industry conditions and another division operates in an industry with unfavorable conditions, the former division will automatically look better than other. And for the number 5, ROI reflects a short time span. The performance of division manager should be measured in the long run. This is top management time span capacity. And lastly, the business cycle strongly affects ROI performance often despite managerial performance. For the stakeholders audit, stakeholders are the people who have stake in the company. They are interested in the company's activities as they are significantly affected by the company's objectives. The organizational stakeholders include shareholders or owners of the company who are interested in dividend, market price, and the share. Trade unions and employees interested in favorable wages, benefits, condition of employment, and better quality of work. And it also the creditors interested in company liquidity, position, and ability to repay the debts with interest in the right time. It also the suppliers interested in retaining the organization as a good customer. Lastly, it is the customer who expect a qualitative product or service at a reasonable price, prompt service, and favorable condition of sales. Stakeholders audit is one of the measure of organizational performance. It also groups to assess both the short-run and long-run impact they may have on organizational performance. For the step 4, which is compare performance with standards. Once the performance of the different aspect of the organization is measured, it should be compared with the predetermined standards. Standards are the set to achieve the already formulated organizational goals and strategies. It is a yardstick and benchmarks that place organizational performance in perspective. The strategy should set standards for all performance areas of the organization based on the organizational goals and strategies. The standards developed by General Electric can be used as model standard. This includes first the profitability standards. These standards include how much gross profit, net profit, return on investment, earning per share, percentage of the profit to the sales of the company should earn in a given time period. Number 2, market position standards. These standards include the total sales region-wise and the product-wise, market share, marketing cost, customer service, customer satisfaction, price, customer loyalty shifts from other organization products. Next is the productivity standards. These standards indicate the performance of the organization in terms of conversion of inputs into outputs. These standards include capital productivity, labor productivity, material productivity, and etc. Number 4, product leadership standards. These standards include the innovation and modification in product to increase the new uses of the existing product, developing new products with new uses. And for number 5, human resource standards. It includes providing competitive salaries, benefits, and different aspects of quality of work life. For number six, employee attitude standard. Employee attitude standard includes favorable attitude towards the nature of work, organization, salaries, benefits, and working environment and quantity of work life treatment by superiors. For number seven, social responsibility standard. All organizations discharge their responsibilities toward different sections of the society. These standards are related to the services of the organization towards community, government, employees, suppliers, creditors, and etc. Lastly, for number eight, it's standards reflecting balance between short range and long range goals. Short range and long range strategy should be balanced successfully. Standards in this area should bring balance between short range and long range goals. So let's proceed to step number five, which is take no action if performance is in harmony with standards. If the performance of various organizational areas match with the standards, the strategist need not take any action. He should just allow the process to continue. However, he can try to improve the performance above the standard if it would be possible without having any negative impact on the existing process. And for the step 6, take corrective action if necessary. So the strategist should take necessary corrective action if the performance is not in harmony with standards. So the strategist compare the performance with standards. If they find any deviation between the standards and performance, then they should take corrective action to bridge the gap between the standards and the performance. For corrective action, it may be defined as change in a company's operations to ensure that it can more effectively and efficiently reach its goals and perform up to its established standards. Strategies that do not achieve standards produce three possible responses. First responses is to revise strategies. Second is to change standards and to take corrective action in the existing process without changing standards and strategies. Strategy change may require a fine tuning of the existing strategy or complete changes in strategies. If it is realized that the existing standards are unrealistic under the present condition, then the strategies should reset the standards, taking the existing condition into consideration. Letter C is the reluctance to use strategic control. Strategists are motivated to formulate and implement strategies, but most of them are reluctant to perform the strategy control function. Strategists may not realize the importance of strategy control, or the strategists have time to conduct long-term analysis. And number three, perform long-term performance as being of equal importance to short-term performance. Lastly is to be evaluated on long-term basis. So now, how to make strategic control creative? Lawrence, Morton, and Gushal make the following recommendation for keeping strategy control creative and viable. First is use strategy control teams drawn together from various parts of the organization. Better follow the informal organization structure and the cross lines of authority to draw individuals with new insights. Next is top management must be involved in the interpretation of key success factors and how they are monitored. And for the number three, strategic control must focus on bottlenecks in the critical success factors and on changes the success factors. So, this is the end of my topic. Thank you for listening, and Mr. Topic will continue the report.
Good evening, everyone. This is Aldo Soseki topic, the second reporter of Chapter 14, Strategic Evaluation and Control. So now, let's proceed to letter D, Strategic Control and Environmental Factors. The environment of the organization is the greatest determinant of the appropriateness of the strategies. Stable environments often allow the organization to maintain its strategic momentum or direction. Dynamic environments force the organization to change the strategic momentum or direction frequently. Further, organizations in such environments require control techniques designed to allow the organization to make strategic leaps. Number 1. Strategic momentum control. This form of strategic control reconfirms that the assumptions on which strategies have been constructed are still valid despite environmental turbulence and change. This means that new strategies are simply extensions of the current strategy. The role of strategic momentum control is to enable the company to make modifications in strategies. Number 2. Strategic leap control. Organizational environment may be dynamic. Firms operating in dynamic environment probably have major shifts in strategies and their assumptions may require more drastic changes. Developing and maintaining control in such an environment need new strategic rules and to cope with the emerging environmental realities. Therefore, the strategies under dynamic environments should redefine the rules for developing and operationalizing strategies. According to Lawrence, there are four forms of strategic leap control, and these are strategic issue management, strategic field analysis, system modeling, and scenarios. Strategic issue management involves the identification of one or a few key issues that are perceived as crucial to an organization to achieve its performance. The strategic issue management is designed to reduce the chances of an organization being caught unaware by a major environmental change. These control techniques encourage the company to remain sensitive to potential environmental changes, plan appropriate for changes, and avoid becoming locked into a particular course of action. Next is strategic field analysis. It is a way of examining the nature and extent of synergies that exist or are lacking between or among components of an organization. This examination allows the managers to exploit the opportunities provided by the environment. Next is systems modeling. Systems models are typically computer-based models trying to capture the administrative realities of an organization and how it interfaces with its environment. And lastly is scenarios. Scenario planning focuses on qualitative aspects of the organization, broad trends, describing alternative major scenarios, and developing an assessment of which scenario is most likely. So now, let's proceed to letter E, information for strategic control. To have accurate and reliable information about various measures of organizational performance is highly essential for successful strategic control. Organizations should develop and implement formal systems to collect valid, reliable, and timely information. There are two information systems. First is Management Information System, or also known as MIS, and the second one is Management Decision Support Systems, or MDSS. Number 1. Management Information System, or MIS. A management information system is a formal computer-assisted organizational function designed to provide managers with information to help their decision making. The important use of such information is to support strategic control, So there are 6 steps in the operation of MIS that we can see in figure 14.5. The first step is directing needs, priorities indicators. The second one, or the second step, is use. The third step is controlling sources, factors being investigated system. The fourth one is feedback and adaptive restructuring. The fifth step is dissemination, who receives what, when, distortion problems. And the last step is analyzing pertinence, reliability, and validity, transformation to intelligence. Number 2, Management Decision Support System, or MDSS. An Management Decision Support System is an independent set of decision aids that help managers make relatively unstructured, perhaps non-recurring decisions. We can see in this figure 14.6 that represent information needs of executives responsible for strategic control in their firms and the internal functions responsible for finding, interpreting, and passing on our critical information to staff managers. So now, let's proceed to letter F. Implementing strategic control. Implementing strategic control is the primary responsibility of the strategist who formulated the strategy. However, it is the responsibility of all members of the organization. All employees participate in the strategy implementation. Therefore, all employees can contribute to the control of strategic implementation process. Number 1 is the role of the strategy planning staff. The role of strategy planning, formulation, implementation, and control go hand in hand. But in some companies, the roles of planning and control of the strategy are separated. This practice is unfortunate as performing these two functions separately by two managers is too often inflexible and bureaucratic. This means that planning without control can eliminate feed forward, and control without planning eliminates feedback. The best result of strategic control are achieved when the planning and control staff work as a team. When strategic control team members represents a cross-section of the organization, a number of advantages are likely to occur. Number 2, role of top management. Top-level managers are primarily responsible for strategy formulation, analysis, and implementation. Therefore, they should understand strategic control and take actions implied in the control process. This means that top managers should have a vision about the possible changes in the environment and their possible effect on the current strategy, and feed this information forward to the staff at the ground. They must be committed to the strategic control process. Top managers are in leadership position, and such as they should influence the organizational members in strategic control process. Next is letter G. Successful maintenance of strategic control. Successful maintenance of strategic control is important from the long-run point of view. In figure 14.7, it presents the variables that are important to maintain successful strategic control. According to this model, top managers must ensure that 4 interrelated organizational variables are consistent and complementary, and these are organizational structure, reward system, information system, and organizational values system or cultures. Quinn argues that implementing strategy and controlling its progress are actually a series of incremental steps. Quinn suggests that managers should do the following to implement strategic and control the strategy successfully. Number 1, create packets of commitment. Executive provide broad goals, a proper climate, and flexible resource support. By allowing various groups to develop and present proposals for strategies, managers are able to build commitment among the groups to support the strategy finally selected. Number 2, maintain objectivity. Managers should avoid taking a stand on issue too early in the generation and evaluation process. Because when managers take a position, the generation of new alternatives often ceases, and the evaluation of existing alternatives is often biased by the position of the top manager. Number 3, eliminate options 2 levels down. Managers can maintain their position of neutrality and avoid rejecting proposals by encouraging, discouraging, or killing options through subordinates. Number 4, crystallize focus and consensus. By controlling membership on committees, managers are able to influence and, if desired, receive the proposals wanted. Properly selected committees can broaden support for an increased commitment to new strategies. Number 5, empower champions. Managers are given responsibility for developing new ideas and programs early. As the program is evaluated and gains support, these individuals tend to become committed to the program or strategy. This means that once it is given final approval, the managers are willing to champion the strategy and to guide it through whatever hurdles are necessary to get it operating effectively. Number 6, develop strategies incrementally but not piecemeal. Part of management's responsibility is to make certain that strategies are integrated and appropriate for the environment in which the firm is operating. It means that strategies may be developed in incremental steps, but they must be made to fit together in an unified and cohesive whole. Last one is number 7. Recognize continuing dynamics. Strategies do not remain constant and fixed for long periods. Part of the executive's responsibility is to gain consensus and support for the new strategy. But at the same time, room must be maintained to modify or terminate the strategy. This means that managers should use directions in making certain that organization does not become overcommitted to the new strategy and unwilling to change at some future point. And that's all. Thank you.